Oh, no, you're fine. We're just hanging out.
afternoon. Thank you for
This
joining
conference will now be recorded.
us. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. The Senate Special Committee on COVID-19. With us this afternoon is Senators Morikawa, Favela, Kim. I'm Senator Kidani, and online we have Senator Donovan Dela Cruz. And this afternoon, we are hearing from Hawai'i Emergency Management Agency, HIAMA, and Major General Hara, the incident commander, is supposed to be with us today, but he is in the cabinet meeting at present, and we will be hearing from Luke Myers. Luke, I'm sorry, I don't know your rank or title.
Yes, ma'am. I am the Administrator of State Emergency Management.
Thank you. Would you like to proceed with an update for today?
We are hearing from the Emergency Management Agency. General Hara, the incident commander, is supposed to be today, and we will be hearing from Myers. I'm sorry, I don't know your rank or title. Thank you. Would you like to proceed with an update for today? We are hearing
Are you guys getting some feedback on your end from?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So State Emergency Management continues to support the COVID-19 incident on a number of different fronts. We have a number of major missions that we are supporting from the State Emergency Operations Center, including the travel restrictions from the mainland and pending restrictions for inter-island travel, screening at the airports, testing throughout the state for first responders and the general public, supporting isolation and quarantine facilities across the islands, and supporting alternate care facility assessments by the Corps in each of our counties. We also have a small group that's working on tracking the financial implications of this from a mission status that we are working on with the Department of Budget and Finance, State Procurement, and the Department of Defense. Testing throughout the state for first responders and the general public. Isolation quarantine facilities across the islands.
Luke, we're still getting some feedback. Is it possible to turn off your, if you're online or your phone?
We also have working on
You watching it live?
mission status.
He's watching, someone's watching it in the room with him.
Luke,
Yes, ma'am.
we're still getting the feedback. Is it possible to turn off the TV or?
Yes, ma'am. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call them the telephone and keep the camera up.
Okay,
Give me 1 second, ma'am. My apologies.
thank you. That's better.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm back.
Thank you, Luke. Proceed.
Yes, ma'am. So a number of priorities that we're focused on rely on the personal protective equipment. We continue to work with our state and county partners and our federal partners on trying to get that and those resources from FEMA Region 9 back in California and from open sources through other areas of the world. There's a heavy reliance on this personal protective equipment to complete these missions as we move forward, and we anticipate a lot of feedback, ma'am. My apologies.
Are you watching a monitor or a TV? You might want to turn that off.
Resources from FEMA Region 9 in California and from open sources other areas of the world. There's a heavy reliance on personal protective equipment to complete these
What else is on his own?
So we're going to try this without the camera, ma'am. My apologies. I'm not sure if it's the computer equipment here, but we are picking up a lot of feedback. Is that any better?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay. My apologies for the technical challenges in trying to communicate with you all today. So state emergency management, we continue to work on the personal protective equipment with our federal partners. Obviously, the mitigation strategies that the state has laid out there at this time, we are limiting travel to the state and are considering the travel restrictions within the islands to help flatten the curve. We are still expecting increasing cases and being able to provide resources to support those partners over the next couple of weeks. What I'd like to do now is kind of open it up to Paul if you have specific questions on any of our open logistics missions or larger emergency management lines of effort that we are currently undertaking, ma'am.
Thank you, Luke. Senators, any questions at this point? Senator Kim.
Thank you very much, Luke. On the neighbor island travel restrictions, can you articulate that? When is it going to start, and is it the 14-day quarantine?
So these restrictions are supposed to go into effect tomorrow morning. We are working with the state and local partners on the operational support plans for these various elements. Our county partners are very eager to continue reducing the potential number of COVID-19 related cases, and they all believe that this mitigation strategy is the best way forward at this time.
Yes, we agree. In fact, we had proposed that when we initially proposed the ban for all travel, and for some reason neighbor islands were exempt, so I'm glad to see that you folks are instituting it. But my question is it going to be the same as mainland passengers coming in, your 14-day quarantine, self-quarantine, unless you get unless you get an exemption?
So there will be a similar process to the mainland travel and the 14 days that was laid out for them. We do have a little bit higher level of operational details specifically for the inter-island travel that we are working through, including screening. Those specific details are being worked out today and will be operationalized when we start up.
Thank you. I did get emails from people in the neighbor island saying that they have to come to Honolulu for doctor's appointments. I'm assuming that they will get an exemption.
Yes, and so just like we had a number of exemptions for the mainland travelers for critical or essential employees, we are including that for the inter-island travel with a number of other exemptions to include those, and there's been a lot of feedback up to the governor's office and to Director Harr on those that may be traveling inter-island for health and medical procedures. We are including that feedback in our process, and that will be accounted for when this goes into play, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Members, further questions?
I have a question.
Senator Favela.
Yeah, just recently, it was said that the military or the, I guess the Army, I guess that was released, that they wasn't going to be releasing any information for military personnel that has the virus.
I could barely make you out, sir. I apologize. The reception on our end. If you could repeat that, Senator, that'd be great.
Okay. You can hear me now?
You got to project to the TV.
So these mics don't work.
Yeah, just project it out to the TV. Yeah.
His feed just.
The mics don't work.
Yeah, that's gonna hold that on us right here. Okay, my 6 feet next steps. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. That's a little bit better. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, so recently we've been hearing that if there's any viruses would be within the military, that it wouldn't be released. They'll be exempt. And I just wanted to know, first of all, why would that happen, that they'll be exempt? Because in my neighborhood, Wahiawa, different parts of the island, we heavily have military in our community. So by not having that information, wouldn't it cause more problems for the community spreading?
From the state EOC perspective, Senator, we have been working closely with our federal counterparts. The numbers from the military side are included in the State Department of Health numbers. I can check into the specific operations on how their specific family or members would be treated or released. But the numbers are included in the state DOH numbers, and we have specifically been tracking that here with the Department of Defense as those numbers have been included.
Okay, thank you.
Luke, are you able to brief us on any information or an update on regarding the Senator Dela Cruz had a request that we look at doing a text message alert for our general public like they're doing in other states and counties? Has that been investigated?
Yes, Director Harr did share, and the Joint Information Center did share. We have a number of alert and warning capabilities that we use for all hazard purposes. Obviously, at the county level, the counties can share various alerts and warnings and push out messages, and they would be the first line of defense in pushing out messages by the county or by a specific geographic area, specifically with regards to COVID-19. The State Emergency Operations Center can act as a backup, as we do for other types of hazards. We could send out a statewide message if called upon, but like with any other incident, disasters start and end at the local level, and we rely on them to push out specific messages, whether they are through wireless emergency alerts or one of their other alerting systems, ma'am.
Also, in previous conversations and here before the Senate committee, Department of Health made comments that wearing masks for those who were not infected or did not have symptoms, wearing masks did not help at all. And in listening to other states and other doctors from around the world, they are telling us otherwise. With that, is there any discussion on whether or not the Department of Health or HIEMA will be reversing that conversation?
We have been in some conversations with state, other state partners and FEMA and back to the White House administration on potential guidance that may be coming down from CDC. The Department of Health does follow that guidance. If there is changes with regards to maybe the kapuna or other vulnerable populations that may be required or recommended, recommended to wear masks, we would work with the Department of Health in getting that message out there to the public. As of this time, there's no specific requirements for that, but it's definitely from a precaution measure we are seeing throughout the state individuals who are on the job or out in public that are wearing masks, and that's for their own personal accountability.
That's correct, but while there are no requirements, as in other countries that have said wearing masks has helped, and now we are hearing that people are contagious even a couple days before they, have any symptoms. So I think that's something that should be discussed, and the community should be encouraged, if they have their own homemade masks, to wear them when they're out in the public, even for shopping purposes, etc. And that's a personal opinion. I'm not a doctor, but from what I've been watching and reading, it couldn't hurt. Senator Moriwaki.
Thank you, Senator. I'd like to add to that. I've been reading about the Singapore, Taiwan, some of the countries where it has really brought down their levels and contained the community spread. It's not only social distancing, but the masks, and especially in public places. I've noticed in grocery stores and food handlers, they're without masks. If they can be given masks, gloves, so that they're highly public areas, that if you can have your discuss that with the health department and other partners, ways in which we, not the N95 masks, but at least something to cover your mouth so that you're not infecting others. It would lower the contagiousness and the contagion. And so if you can take that back to discuss the wearing of masks in public places, and especially when you are serving the public in grocery stores or in some of these takeout places as well. I think that would be helpful, and I don't know what the supply chain is, but if we look at the supply chain of getting those kinds of masks in addition to the N95 masks for healthcare workers. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. From the State Emergency Management and in support of the Director Hara, we do acknowledge that personal protective equipment or masks can be used in a number of settings, whether that's in the job or in high traffic areas. We do acknowledge that those types of commodities are in high demand, and so those that may want those. We definitely understand, though, that the medical industry, of the first responders, they are
saying that we don't have supplies or we don't have equipment. I mean, it's not scientific, but certainly if you're sneezing into a napkin or you're sneezing into a paper towel that's on your face, you certainly are not spreading it as badly as if you weren't. So I think it's important that we don't say it doesn't help, that we tell people any little thing that they can do to make sure they're not spreading the germs. I think is a message that we really would like to see out there. Having said that, can I ask a question regarding the release of prisoners? Are you folks involved with making sure that when and if these inmates are released, that they are going to be having a place to go to, that they're going to practice social distancing? I've been getting emails from constituents very concerned about the 426 inmates that is being slated to be released.
I missed the part of that, ma'am. It was a little crackly on my side. Do you mind repeating that question one more time? Thank you.
Are you folks in any way involved with managing the 426 inmates that are being said to be released into the community? And are you folks the ones that's going to manage the social distancing, the place for them to stay? Who is really going to bird dog this to assure the public that they're going to be safe?
Yes, from the State Emergency Management, from the State EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, ma'am, we are supporting the Attorney General in their effort from a planning perspective. We are aware that there are lots of challenges in implementing those operations. We are not in direct lead of that, but we are in support. So we understand that there may be impacts. There are ways that every individual that is impacted by COVID-19 can practice social distancing, and these individuals, as they are released back into the community, we would ask that they take the same actions that we would from anyone else.
So who will be directly responsible to follow up with this population that would be released to make sure that they have a place to stay, they will stay at home, and so forth? Because there's certainly no jobs at this time, so they won't be working, and the public's concerned. They're saying, how is this going to help us at this time? So who would be the point person that will be following up on all of this?
So from the State Emergency Operations Center, I will take that back to the Attorney General, who we've been working with, and we can get you an answer on that now.
Thank you.
Further questions? Senator De La Cruz, do you have any questions?
Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
You know, at one of the previous meetings, General Hara had passed out a Excel sheet with different phases of where we're at in reacting or organizing a response. Yes, sir. Has that been finalized, or is that still in draft form?
The State Emergency Operations Center has been working with a number of partners on the finalization of that document. Obviously, there are a number of current operations that are going on throughout the next couple of weeks, but that phase plan is almost ready to be shared, sir.
Okay, so I guess we can just have Ha'ima back on the agenda at some point so we can get the details then.
Yes, sir. We can share. We had a briefing here in the last day on the larger plan that Director Hart outlined for several team members to put together, and there could be a specific briefing on that document. Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you been tracking, or has anyone been tracking other, I guess you are, other states and other countries and how they move from one level to the next in regards to response?
We've seen a lot of good lessons learned and examples from some of our partners in the West. And back on the mainland of the U.S., we have specifically been watching partners in Washington State, in California, and some of the East Coast states as they are all several weeks ahead of us, it appears at this point in time, on mitigation strategies to reduce basically transmission from coming afar to how responding to when there's transmission within the state. So we have been in conversations at the Department of Health and at State Emergency Management with our partner agencies from a number of different states.
Okay, I guess one of the, for some reason I get these emails from the country of New Zealand, and they're saying that on a specific day they're going to move from level 3 to level 4, and they explain what all the different levels are, and at level 4 what is expected of the public.
Yes, some countries and some state emergency management programs have very defined levels for a lot of the hazards that they face, and we are seeing that New Zealand and from some other partners, as an incident moves to a new phase, that information is clearly articulated to the public, and then whether those are partners or individuals take specific actions. The framework plan that Director Hara is laying out is identifying that. From the state emergency operation perspective, this incident is unlike any other incident that we have seen. So there's a lot of different impacts to our community that are occurring. So we necessarily are not trying to clearly look at a point in time, but how these impacts are impacting us on a week-by-week time frame, and then as we go out several weeks, what are the projected impacts? But there are phased approaches that a number of our partners use, and we are working on a larger framework with Director Hara for this incident to document some of those.
Yeah, I guess, but if you end up communicating to the public that if we don't take these so-called flatten the curve measures more seriously, I think there's still some question about not everyone adhering to the declarations, then that would mean we would have to move to another level, and you're already communicating to the public. I think Senator Kim said it best, that if we keep getting informed by press conference, we all get whiplash, versus letting people know that as time goes on, if we don't meet these benchmarks or if something occurs, then we have to get ready for that next level, and this is what the next level entails.
Yes, sir, I acknowledge what you're saying. In this type of incident, as we see impacts and we project those impacts, we are developing operational plans to support those and to communicate to the public. And I will take your comments and share them back with Director Hara and the Joint Information Center on how we are messaging with regards to this incident.
Okay, so I guess at some future time, I'd like to know what is the next level, what does the next level include, and what would those triggers be, so that we all know what that we can anticipate it, versus just hearing it. Okay, you guys, we're at now, we got to change and react to this now at a 2:30 press conference.
Yes, sir, and Director Hara's plan does identify a number of phases that even go out into recovery for this first wave of COVID-19 that we're facing across the globe, and there are triggers and action items in there. With the challenges that we've been faced with this incident, we are working on operational plans to flatten that curve as much as possible, with support from, obviously, from the governor and the mayors.
Okay, well, I think we definitely want to hear when you have that plan finalized.
Yes, sir.
So we can, thank you.
Thank you. Luke, I wanted to ask, there was a very recent breaking news that Mayor Caldwell is asking the president to stop all non-essential travel to Honolulu. Are you aware of that?
if there is a press information on that, I know that that there has been discussion with regards to how we continue to flatten the curve and reduce potential transmission into the state. I couldn't comment directly on Mayor Caldwell's actions, but I am aware that there have been conversations on a number of mitigation strategies to help do that, ma'am.
Okay, my comment is, though, it sounds like that's something that the mayor is doing for the city and county of Honolulu or the island of Oahu. And my question would be, then why would that not be statewide rather than just for the county? So if there's a way that Hawai'i could look at that and just make a recommendation, it doesn't make sense to me if you're just requesting it for the island of Oahu, and then they go directly to the Big Island or Maui and then hop on a flight here. So if you could check up on that.
Will do, ma'am. We'll take that back for action.
My final question is regarding some of the hoarding that still exists and the stores. I'm getting calls from constituents that they're not able to find, daily staples like toilet paper or rice, etc. And is there a way that the public can be informed that we have regular products being shipped in, but it seems as soon as they're on the shelf, they're being hoarded again, and those who need it are not getting any supplies at all. So what is the plan to ask the supermarkets and the stores to make sure that they are trying to limit it so everybody has a chance to get what they need?
Yes, ma'am. From the State Emergency Operations Center perspective, we have not seen any issues with supplies coming into the state. There's a steady supply of commodities and goods. Obviously, there has been a demand and a continued demand on specific products, as you have called out. We do have a business group that we have been working with and communicating with them. I know that some of the private sector has taken a really creative initiatives, such as the Kapuna hours and things like that, to allow for some of our high-risk segments of our community to get access to those commodities. We've also seen some other businesses on their own limiting the quantity of some of those goods so that they are widely shared. We are confident that the public is well stocked and supplied for this incident and future incidents that may come down the line, and we will continue to work with the private sector on getting that message out.
Thank you. I think that message has to come from either the governor or General Hara in some kind of press release to make sure that they know there has not been any slowdown of our shipping schedules, etc., because I don't think that message is strong enough to the public.
Yes, ma'am. We'll take that back to Director Hara.
And my final comment is with regard to the masks that we talked about earlier. By no means are we saying that we should get masks before our health care workers. That's not what I'm saying. I think what we're saying is that if you have it available and if you can make your own, then it is recommended to wear a mask. Women who have scarves, you can go out with a scarf and wrap that around your mouth and nose when you enter stores, etc. Men can wear bandanas or whatever. I mean, it's just an extra precaution. Our whole goal for all of us is to stop the transmission of the virus, and to me, every little bit helps. Members, further questions?
No, sir.
Luke, thank you very much for sharing your information with us today, and be safe out there, and we'll talk with you again soon. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your time.
Is that on the line? Our next department is Department of Business and Economic Development and Tourism. Administrator Dennis Ling is the Business Development and Support Division. and manager. Dennis, are you online with us?
Yes, I am, Senator.
Thank you for sharing time with us today. Are you able to start with a statement you may have or may want to make?
Sure. Yes, thank you. Aloha, and thank you for this opportunity to speak before the Senate Special Committee on COVID-19. Our division, the Business Development and Support Division, traditionally supports small business in the marketing area, helping businesses to increase sales overseas and domestically. We are also involved with community-based economic development, defense industry resilience, enterprise zones, opportunity zones, and international affairs. Today, that has all been put on hold as we have become an advocate for small business in many areas that we may not directly be responsible for, but where we can lend a voice for small business, we will. To that end, we are concentrating on, first of all, accessing federal funding and identifying state funding for new programs and other purposes, and also communicating with businesses and developing public-facing FAQs. Our director has designated our division as the liaison with the Chambers of Commerce, the statewide chamber, and the island chapters. Moreover, we are the liaison for the ethnic chambers, all of which have their various concerns. On communications, our immediate task is to inform the public of the CARES Act and the assistance available through SBA. While the details of the assistance programs are still being finalized, we find it our responsibility to get the word out to as much businesses as possible and as soon as possible. Our website, investhawaii.gov, provides the latest information as we get them, almost on a daily basis. 2 weeks ago, we sent out a plea to small businesses to answer a worksheet that was necessary to get our state certified as eligible for the SBA's Small Business Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. And within a matter of 3 days, we got almost 4,000 respondents. We know our businesses are suffering. Our director has also designated our division as the liaison with the SBA in order to facilitate our small businesses to get assistance from the SBA. So our division has offered its services to the SBA to serve as a virtual call center to answer questions and to help with applications and to facilitate communications. However, the provisions of the CARES Act, which loan programs you will hear about from SBA, are new, and there is much to learn. On accessing federal funding and identifying state funding for new programs and other purposes, recently the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii shared with us the results of a survey they sent out. And number 1 and 2 on the list were tax and mortgage rent relief. While we support them on these requests, it is beyond the scope of our responsibility. But where we can help were numbers 3 and 4 of their list, which included low or zero interest loans and direct capital infusion or grants. While we do have the vehicles for such programs, it would have to come with a lot of exemptions in order to move expeditiously. Our disaster loan program, which is the vehicle we would use for loans, comes with restrictions such as higher interest rates than desirable. And we need funding. The disaster loan program has about $100,000 in its revolving fund. And our community-based economic development program that we would look to for grants only has $250,000. We hope that the CARES Act would help provide funds to our state to implement some new programs, either through money sent directly to our state to deal with the economic impact of COVID-19, or to other agencies such as the Economic Development Administration. And thank you very much, and I'm able to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dennis. Members, any questions?
Hi, Dennis.
Senator Moriwaki.
Thank you for sharing. I was wondering about the kinds of programs that you have from the state versus the federal money that's coming in from SBA, and whether there are other programs in the state that can help small businesses as well as business in general, like the various industries that are being affected because of the virus. So I'm just wondering, are there any other kinds of programs, and how are you communicating that with a number of businesses who are hurting right now with not only mortgage but other operating costs?
Yes, thank you for that question. We don't. To answer it, straightforwardly, we don't have any programs that at this moment are able to help small business in meeting some of the financial obligations that they have. As I mentioned, we do have two vehicles that we could use, but first of all, our disaster loan program is woefully underfunded. We did have a state program called the Hawai'i Capital Loan Program that was sunsetted many years ago, and that was a program that did provide loans directly to businesses. We, through our community-based economic development program, we provide microloans to businesses, but that is woefully unfunded for the anticipated magnitude of the kinds of requests that we would get.
The other day, was it yesterday, we spoke with the Department of Labor director, who had suggested that businesses retain their employees rather than close down shop. And maybe there would be ways in which the state and now the CARES Act can infuse money into these businesses so they could stay afloat while we work through the COVID virus. So I'm just wondering whether you have any thoughts of how the program, whether it's your two programs that you have or other programs the federal SBA might have or other you said EDA would have, that we could actually build the infrastructure for that should monies come in, or working with the private sector to assist them during this really difficult times.
I know the SBA program called the Payroll or Paychecks Protection Program will offer up to $10 million in loan, and there is a provision that the first 8 weeks or so of payroll expenditures would be forgiven. So that is the program that we're urging all businesses to apply for immediately, because that is one that is going to be worked through the private sector. So they're go to the banks who are knowledgeable or are in partnership with the SBA can apply for this Paycheck Protection Program and get some relief for the first 8 weeks of payroll. But the SBA can answer more on that program. It is still, the guidelines are still being formulated, so they anticipate something probably by the next week to have more information.
And Dennis, is it your agency or is it SBA that would work with the banks and work with the businesses to assist them in terms of helping them through this period? Or is there a network or an association, or how do you operate communicating? You said you had 4,000 applicants for the loan program, but how do you get the word out to the businesses who really do need the help and how they might be helped?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are in negotiations with the SBA. I've had discussions with the district director, as I mentioned, to create a sort of a virtual call center in which we can have one hotline, Hawai'i emergency loan hotline, in order to provide information to businesses who are asking many questions and have that answered on a very timely basis. The SBA would have to investigate whether they can actually do something like this with us, but our offer is there, and we would like to, especially as things get more, the guidelines are more well developed, and we know exactly what is required and the terms and other guidelines are necessary that we can relay it to the public.
So on your call center, you have enough staff to staff this?
Well, we're going to use our division. That's what we're looking at. And, you know, the good thing about this is you could do this call center from stay at home and work. And, you know, so that's what we're looking at. And our whole department, actually, I have to say our whole department is, you know, willing to assist in this. Our director has made it known that, you know, if we do need additional help for something that we want to implement, especially in response to COVID-19, we can have them to also participate.
Thank you. Thank you for your help on this matter. Back to you.
Thank you, Dennis. I think this is a time when you know, GBED can help, whether it be working with the chamber or our small business administration, and getting together and probably looking for ideas that we haven't thought of and trying to help our small business owners. One of the thoughts that I had this is a time that you want to do jobs around your house, whether it's you know, change your plumbing out for those who own older homes, or looking at landscaping. But for many of us who are, you know, don't know how to go about looking for a dependable small business to do jobs like that, it would be helpful if, whether it's through you guys or through the unions, that, you know, put things in the paper that, you know, these people are licensed, et cetera, and, you know, generally what it would cost for, you know, doing plumbing in a 3-bedroom home, or et cetera. And I think it's just my throwing ideas out there, but I'm just saying that there are a lot of homeowners that are hesitant, you know, to at this time do those kinds of things because they don't know if they're going to get the fly-by-nights, and they don't know whether or not the lines to DCCA are open and available to check on people. So I think some of those ideas maybe should be discussed to see how we can encourage the general public who are able to afford to, you know, do these kinds of things, to maybe take advantage of the time that you can do it now, and maybe it'd be less expensive. But those are just ideas that I wanted to throw out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a very good idea, and I think there's a lot of innovative ideas that are coming forward now that people are looking at ways to better utilize their skills in ways that rather than you know, was done before. So yes, you're right.
Thank you. Members, are there any further questions of Dennis Lane from the Department of Business and Economic Development? If not, thank you very much. Oh, Donovan, go ahead. Donovan Dela Cruz.
So Dennis, you guys outlined your reactive approach to people calling and being open when people have concerns. What is the department doing to try to be a little bit more proactive in being more proactive in helping small businesses and making small businesses alert in what they might have to do? Is it just going to be a thing to call your number and?
I think we are on our communications program. We are being proactive in making sure that the businesses do, first of all, apply for this SBA loan. I mean, you know, the $350 billion on the CARE Act, I mean, you know, which is a lot of it is going to the SBA. The SBA used to have about $20 billion in loans that they process. Now they have $350 billion. The most proactive thing we can do is to make sure and urge people, businesses, to apply for this SBA loan. And that is what we're doing, and being proactive and making sure that they do.
Been reaching out to them though, because they're, like for instance, I think of Wahiwa. We have a small Subway sandwich shop. How is it going to get to her that she needs to take some of these actions in calling, or she may need help filling out some of the information? I mean, we have a lot of different ethnic groups that have small businesses. I mean, how are we reaching out to them?
Well, we have a very strong social media campaign, and we have a lot of partners in which we've reached out to. And that's why in 3 days we were able to get 4,000 respondents to our plea to help us qualify our state as an economic disaster, so we would qualify for the SBA funds. So we feel that we have a very strong social media and outreach campaign on our website and through our newsletter, well, not our newsletter, but our website.
Okay, so can you forward some of that to us so that we can also get that to our constituents?
Sure. Yes, definitely. We'll forward you the information of our website for people to sign up, and that we can notify them directly thereafter.
Okay, and so is there, when they call and they need help filling out the loan application, you're able to assist them with that too?
Well, not at the moment, because we have to negotiate that and work it out with the SBA, who has some criteria regarding partnerships that they would need to get involved in. But that's when we know, what we want to do is to implement this just as soon as the Paycheck Protection Program is online.
Okay. But so when are you planning on being or having that tool available or that assistance available in helping small businesses fill out the loan application?
Well, we hope soon. My target is within the week or prior. See, the payroll protection program, they should have more finalized guidelines within a week. And, that would be my time frame for that also, provided we can get buy-in from, other parties.
Okay, the other parties are whom?
SBA.
Oh, okay. Okay, I guess we'll just have to follow up with you maybe in a couple of days to see where you're at, and then hopefully you have more information by then on how we can send that message out to some of our small business constituents on what kind of assistance is available.
Sure, yes, definitely.
Okay, but if you do have that those services up and running sooner than that, can you notify us, especially the helping some of the small businesses fill out their loan application?
Yes, certainly we will.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Favela has a question, Dennis.
Yeah, just kind of going to say this, Senator Donovan de la Cruz. In my community, same thing it says, they don't have time to go on to all of these things. So they're not notified either through newspaper or through the morning news or news. They're not going to know because they're too busy preparing their food on a daily and a nightly basis. So they don't go and look through the social medias and these things that you're talking about and these programs to get them out, unless they actually have a hard copy mail to the business that they're going to look at it or go on the news or newspaper. They're going to miss it. They're definitely going to miss it because in our communities, they're really hurting right now. You already said that they're going to have to be a part of. So as soon as we can get it to them and they apply so they can find out the process and how they're going to go about getting some help for their businesses.
Yes, well, definitely we're going to try to utilize as much media exposure as we can to get the word out, to a press release, and if we have to put ads in the paper, that would also be something that we would do. But I would think, we would definitely issue press releases and make sure that the word is out there, and through our relationships with the ethnic chambers of commerce, that they will get the word out to their district chambers of commerce and community chambers of commerce to let them know about some of the programs that we may be implementing.
Thank you.
Senator Moriwaki.
Dennis, just to clarify, small businesses are employers having 500 or fewer employees. Is that correct?
That is the definition by the SBA, yes.
And so of these 4,000 applicants, are they being helped to go through? I know when we get federal funding, there's a lot of paperwork, and it could be a little bit complex for a number of businesses that are pretty much on the front line serving or doing their business. Is there any way, again, going back to Senator Dela Cruz's comment about being more proactive of assisting them in completing these applications so that it can help them to get help sooner? And I don't know if these 4,000, are they all going to get loans or assistance? And if you can clarify that so that people don't try to do all of this and waste their time because they can't get a loan. So I think it's trying to make as much, make it more efficient as possible so that people can get the service they need.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the interesting features of the SBA Paycheck Protection Program is that it's going to be the application will be made much more simpler than normal SBA or federal government loan programs have been. And that is one thing that is pretty much being expressed by the SBA, as well as the banks, who will also be involved. Well, you have to go to a bank or a credit union in order to get this loan, so it's a community thing. It's not having to apply to some overseas mainland entity. You would work with your bank or credit union to get this loan, and the banks and the credit unions who are certified by the SBA to process these kinds of loans do have their clientele that they're getting in touch with too, or will let them know definitely about this loan program.
So are all the banks involved, or are there, I guess they were called preferred partners, are all the banks so that anyone can go to their bank or any bank?
I can't answer the question, but most of the banks are involved in this. I know Bank of Hawaii, First Hawaiian, Territorial, Central Pacific, but the SBA can answer that better than I can. It's banks that have dealt with the SBA before and know about some of the procedures and processes. And but most of the banks are aware about this. And it's a good way to get the banks involved with the SBA, new banks that haven't been involved, because the more people who can participate in this, the more banks that can participate in this, the better for the public. Also, the loans that the banks are making under this PPP program are fully guaranteed by the government. So it's sort of no risk to the bank. Also, they can charge processing administrative fees, so they're making money on this. And the 8 weeks provision that would be forgiven, it's essentially a grant program up front for the first $10,000, I believe. So that's something in which could be a business driver for the banks, as well as something that the public needs to be aware of.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. Any further questions? If not, thank
I just
you.
wanted to.
Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I'll try to be quick. So, Dennis, if you can just clarify, what's included in the payroll cost? Does that also include the utilities, rent, and some of the non-traditional payroll expenses? Is that all covered?
After payroll, rent and utilities and mortgage interest can be included. Yeah.
Okay. And then, do you know at the time of the loan or after the time, how long, what's the waiting period before funds are available?
Well, since it will be offered by the bank and guaranteed by the federal government, I think it's pretty much a matter of days. I mean, few
Okay,
days.
can you just double check that and clarify that for us, please?
I think SBA will be on the call too.
Yeah, okay. No, but so you.
Yeah, rather than, yeah.
But you guys are talking to the banks.
No, well, SBA is talking to the banks at the moment. The banks have questions because they don't, the guidelines haven't been finalized yet. So, first of all, they're waiting for the guidelines. So.
Okay, and the funds are available as soon as the guidelines are done. The funds are available.
That is another question for SBA, but I assume so.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll just ask them. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Dennis.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a quick recess.
rent, things like this, that a small business was unable to pay, which they normally would have, but was unable to pay because of the COVID pandemic and its impact on our travel and tourism industry, on our restaurant and hospitality, and then any other kind of business that time we're still defining the terms of the program. Congress has determined that this is going to be a devastating and extended impact and came up with the CARES Act, which was approved last week. This changed a lot of terms and of some of the loan programs, and then it also created some new lending opportunities. SBA has tried to respond very, very quickly to that. First, when the platform for the economic injury or EIDL loans crashed last week, they went ahead and went out to a private sector partner and expanded our platform for intake and also brought on more call center help to help address the demand. We were seeing from all the states, even just in one state in 4 days, we got over 300,000 economic injury disaster loans and created grants as part of that program as well. We also have small business counseling, small business contracting, and there are some other tax provisions that the IRS will be working with us to deliver to help give relief to small business owners. The Paycheck Protection Program plan will run through our 7A channels and engage all of our local banks and credit unions that have an SBA agreement on file and are considered active SBA lenders. So this will open up a face-to-face contact for our small businesses locally to approach their bank of record or a bank that they would want to be working with to make a request for these loans. The loans also feature some debt forgiveness, depending on keeping utilities, keeping the business open, are what these loans will cover. These, again, go through the bank. They are made through the SBA. They are 100% guaranteed, and they do have a portion of fee relief. They'll all have, they're still coming out with, we're hoping that we'll get the SOPs, our operating procedures, and the underwriting guidelines by tomorrow. SBA Hawai'i has been on the phone with most of our banks to help them develop the application form, understand the underwriting criteria, and really be ready to ramp up to assist more small businesses and can help fund or extend the funding to a small business owner, replace payroll costs for people who may have been furloughed, but also to help them perhaps come back to work sooner and through the term. These loans will run. Look at the term from February closely with our SBDC, our Small Business Development Center, our Women's Business Center, the new center at the Y, our DBOC, and other resource partners to make sure that small businesses are aware of this information and they get the help that they need to make a good application and sustain their business and move to faster recovery.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sawyer, for that information. Right before you came in, we were online with Dennis Ling from our Department of Business and Economic Development, and Senator Donovan De La Cruz, who is online with us, actually was asking questions related to some of the statements you made. So, Senator De La Cruz, would you like to start with questions for Ms. Sawyer?
Okay, thank you for calling in. I guess I wanted some clarity on what was included on the payroll costs.
Donovan, just so you know, she is actually here in the flesh with us. Thank you.
Oh, I guess from the go-to meeting we can't see it.
Oh,
okay. We only can see 3 beautiful women.
And what about Senator Favela?
I can't see him. I can't see him. He's on.
Well, that's because of our social distancing.
So, Jane, thanks for coming in. I guess, can you elaborate a little bit about the what's included in the payroll cost definition?
The eligible costs for payroll include compensation, including salary, wages, commission, or other compensation, payments of cash, tips, or equivalent are included in that calculation. There is a limit there that through all the calculations they've done, I think it's sitting right now that the high end of what will be covered will be up to $100,000 salary or total compensation package. They also look for payments for sick leave, vacation leave, family leave, medical leave, allowance for if you're dismissed or separated, compensation of employees whose principal place of residence is outside the U.S., and qualified sick and family leave for which a credit is allowed under other sections of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So that's the thing, the benefits from one other program or other loan or tax credit would be deducted or could not be claimed multiple times through any of these loan programs.
Okay, does that include any utilities or rent or some of the non-traditional payroll expenses?
Those can be factored in. It's kind of an interesting thing because they allow you to enumerate those costs in the economic injury disaster loan. The formula for putting the PPP that they're looking at, it will cover a 3-month period. So it is a limited time for coverage, but they want to get some of these done quickly and efficiently so they can get the money out and confirm to the small businesses that this overhead will be covered and allow them to bring some of their furloughed employees back to work on the job, even if they're doing some different kinds of services.
We had some of our employers asking about the GET, so that is included.
Yes.
Payroll GET, that would all be included. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So what are the guidelines expected to be completed?
We have just put some information up on the SBA website. We've also seen some information on the Treasury website that is outlining some of the details. And this is definitely one of those times when we're flying the airplane as we build it, and people are trying to get on board quickly. So we're hoping that they'll turn it around very, very quickly, and we'll have some very firm answers. We even got a sample application form that will be distributed to our banks today. So it is, I think, very, very ambitious, but with some of the things that they've done, like going to a private sector to run the economic injury disaster loan platform and do all the intake and that processing, that should speed things up very, very much. And we'll see how the banks are going to be working with this to get them in and process them, because they'll be process them under some of their procedures, local procedures, sending them to the SBA electronically to get a final kind of rubber stamp on the loan, and then they'll be dispersing the funds. And again, it's 100% guaranteed, so the banks are definitely encouraged and motivated to do this. The government will also cover any loan fees that are incurred by the banks.
Okay. Is the application already available online, or do they need to get that from the bank?
I think that they could find the information and start doing the preparation or the data collection, Senator, but I'm not sure that I don't know that the banks will be giving it out right away. So I would probably reserve, saying definitely yes on that until I saw one. I don't know if the form actually has an OMB number on it yet or not. So that may be one of those things that's holding us up.
Okay, if you don't mind sending us or notifying us once you know it's available, please.
Certainly.
And then I guess my last question is, who promotes this? Is that part of your office, or is it a partnership with DBID, or is it really DBID's responsibility, as Dennis mentioned, to get out to the community and get people familiar with what's going on?
Well, we work closely with DBID, but it's we will employ all of our resource partners and all of our partners in the community. So many of the business organizations, the trade organizations, the chambers have been very, very effective. So once we get the information in a more concrete manner, then we'll be disseminating it quite broadly to everybody. We've had a couple over the past 2 weeks, there have been multiple conference calls, training seminars, webinars, and things along that line to a number of different groups that have generated a lot of response. I was just on the phone with Dennis earlier talking about standing up a call center to assist small businesses because neither one of our offices alone has enough staff or enough information. They're not knowledgeable in the loan programs. We don't know some of the state programs. So we figured we could combine our resources and be a lot powerful and more effective to reach the numbers that we need to. So I think I will appreciate anything that you could do if I can get you information, forms and press and send it out to your constituents, because I know many of you have excellent newsletters and communications capabilities as well. So particularly this changes a lot of things where, you know, independent contractors in with some of the other relief programs as well, whether it's some of the things that are coming through HUD and other government-backed loans for mortgages and things like that, where there is some deferred payment and some forgiveness that is currently being included through the CARES Act.
Thank you. I think we are very happy to have you here with us today, Ms. Sawyer. We are online with about probably 100 viewers. KHON is live streaming this, and we're also on Olelo. So it's important for them to hear from you, and I would appreciate it if you do have a website or something that we can also put out in our newsletters. If you could provide that to us,
we'd be happy to.
Before you leave or shortly after. I wanted to ask you, you talked about a $100,000 limit for this program. Are you talking about per person or per business?
It's per person, per position. So, for example, one of the examples they gave was specifically for an owner who, you know, particularly in a professional firm, likely earns more than $100,000 a year, but that is capped. You would look at your payroll, and there'll be formulas that will be set up so that you can determine, based on what your payroll looked like either the previous year of the same term or the previous 3-month period, that you would extrapolate from that, and they would look at, because the federal government will have some tax information on your payroll as well, so that's a place to verify what you're claiming. So there are a couple of different models that were proposed for doing that, but any employee, you have 5 employees on, you bring all those employees back onto payroll, they could get either from between 75 and 100%, I believe it is, of their actual pay, their compensation package paid out to them. The credit would go to the business, or it would go to them in the form of a loan, so they would have the funds to pay for those expenses.
And if a position were split and you had 2 part-time employees in a position, would both of them qualify?
Both part-time employees are included.
Thank you for that. Members, other questions? Senator Kim.
Thank you very much. I have a number of small businesses in my district that have contacted me and want more details. First, let me ask this. Would the banks have the details if they went in? Would they know the particulars?
They may know more about the specific loan. By the end of this week, they should be pretty well versed in what is going into the payroll protection program loans. So
when we talked with Mr. Ling from DBED, he mentioned something about the loan turns into the grant, correct? But that there was the first $10,000.
Okay.
So what does that mean? Is it just $10,000?
That's in the economic injury disaster loan, so that they could turn capital around quickly. This is an advance, so a $10,000 advance that ultimately would be forgiven for that loan program. So right now, if you go into SBA.gov disaster, you could find SBA.gov disaster. You could find, it will take you, the first page that comes up right now across the country is apply for the disaster. There's a coronavirus information page, disaster assistance link, and you can click on it and get right into a 2 or 3 page application right away. And it helps you identify the type of business that you have, Are you the sole owners? Are you a sole proprietor? Do you, a couple of that eligibility questions. And then it talks a little bit further about some of the conditions of your business. Then it gets into the information about what are the costs that you would need reimbursed. Give me the facts about your business, where you're located, type of business. One of the questions, are you a small business? And so it just kind of goes down the line to indicate, help you answer those questions, and then it collects some of the economic information and some references, and you can submit it. The last button before you hit it says, I would like to be considered for an economic injury disaster loan advance. You click that, and that indicates that you would accept a $10,000 advance, and that ultimately would be waived. So even at this point, with the economic injury disaster loan, if they take a couple more days to run your business, to process your loan application, you would still have the chance to say, okay, I don't think this is going to be, you're offering a loan, but it may not be enough money. I don't think it's going to be enough for what I really need to sustain my business. I'd like to get $20,000 more. I'll send you more documentation. The business owner will have about a reconsideration period and a negotiation period of about 6 months before he can decline the loan. There's no cost to apply. There's no obligation once you apply. So it's very, very flexible. But the thing with that is there's a limited pot of money, so we recommend people to get online and make the application right away.
So let me see if I understand this. So they can, right now, before you apply for any loan, they can go on this site, sba.gov disaster, and apply and receive a $10,000 advance grant.
Yes.
And that would come...
If that's go process, confirm their eligibility, and then...
Who pays it to them? How do they...
It will go by electronic transfer from the IRS.
Oh, okay.
So the connector for all of these will be their EIN or TIN, depending on what kind of business they have.
Now, that advance is determined upon the fact that they kept their entire payroll.
That one is not. That's the PPP.
Okay.
This one, if they've let their employees go, I think the only thing that they need to show is that they're continuing to operate their business, or they may be not operating now. They may have closed their doors for the duration of our emergency proclamation here in Hawaii, but they intend to open up and continue operating.
Okay. Well, and I'm sorry, can I continue?
Yes, please.
So they get the $10,000 and they want to apply for the loan that could turn into a grant, right?
Okay, yes.
So keep the employees, keep paycheck protection.
The paycheck protection. So they've already applied for the EIDL loans online. They've gotten a $10,000 advance. They've gone to their bank and said, I think I need more help. And they apply for a PPP loan through their banker. They are given an award for that program, and that's the program that has forgiveness, but that $10,000 will be applied against that loan. So if you've already said, I needed this $10,000 to pay my rent and to pay some payroll that I don't have, it would be taken out of the forgiveness portion in your PPP, is how I understand it.
What's the limit to this loan?
The economic injury disaster loan, the PPP is $10 million.
$10 million.
$10 million.
And they can, if they let their employees go, they can bring them back.
If they let them go, they can look back to what their status was as of February 15th of this year. So February 15th.
Do they have to pay them for February 15th?
They can set the term that they're covering. So they're allowed to go back and say, I'd like you to come back to work, and I will, you can extend it, as I understand it, you could extend your period to June 30th, 2020, and then you can backtrack, and I think it is I'd have to look to be sure the term, but I can send you the details. It's because it's been shifting and changing.
But it's only for 8 weeks, right?
Yeah,
So
it's a short period of
It's
time.
only either 8 weeks from February 13th, 8 weeks forward, or 8 weeks from the time
They start,
they get
yeah.
the loan and bring them back. Is that-
Mhm.
yeah.
I think that's the original proposal, yes.
And do they have to bring back 100% of all the employees?
I think it is 100%. But they can also look at bringing them back at up to 75% of their pay instead of the full 100%.
And is there a guarantee that they will turn into a grant?
They have to apply. It depends if the conditions change, but I think the intention is yes, that it will turn into a grant. I don't know if there are any little sticky pieces in there that haven't been sorted out yet.
Up to 10 million,
Per business.
per business?
One of the things that they've done, for example, is to, some of the standard rules for SBA loans, they look at, do you have credit elsewhere? Meaning that you have assets or you have a built-up reserve in your company, things like that. So you wouldn't normally go to the government and ask for a guaranteed loan because you could really fund the business on your own. They've eliminated that from consideration. They also look at affiliation, where you may own one or more different types of businesses or similar businesses. Say you own a number of restaurants, and because you own and control them, the L&Ls, each one of them could be considered independent. Usually that's sized on the website and also on the Treasury website now. And it all is around COVID-19 or coronavirus response.
Do you have the address for the Treasury website?
I thought I printed one of their information sheets.
That would be good for us to let businesses know, because I know they all have questions.
Oh, no, it's not it. I can send that to you this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
There's a very good summary with some explanations and good links that is on the Senate Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee website. And they dovetail, they cover a few things that are similar. So it does take a little sorting out, because the economic injury disaster loan is designed to help sustain small businesses through the period of economic downturn. So with that one, the cost that you would look at, or from the January 30th date, 2020, you'd look at what your revenues are in this period, say from January 30th to now, and the same period from 2019 or 2018, if that's what shows up on your last tax payment, and look to see the difference. So even when we worked with the governor's office to get this disaster declaration from the SBA, businesses were telling us we're at 50% of what we would normally have taken in if all conditions remained the same. So if your business is down 50%, you could look at what you'd indicate that was your hardship, and then you would tell them your fixed costs, so that it would include payroll that you would not be able to meet, rents, utilities, fixed costs that you may have contracts on for web or advertising or things like this, and you could outline what those expenses were, and then they would determine when you submit your application what your loss is, what you would need to be able to meet those obligations if this hadn't happened. So that's how they would determine your loan.
And that period goes in how long to how long? Does that go to the end of the year?
I think they're probably looking at, I don't know that it will go all the way to the end of the year, and that's, I think, is one of the harder things to determine, because they'll be comparing month over month, and there may be an extension later. But I think they were looking at this term, and the recovery may last 6 months. So I haven't seen exactly how they're calculating.
And is that also $10 million budget or max?
That one, it maxes at $2 million.
Members, further questions? Very good. Senator De La Cruz, any further questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up with a comment. He said that there is only a certain pot of money, and I have a little bit of concerns because Hawaii is at the tail end
Yes.
of the coronavirus. So many of our businesses may not be experiencing all of that just yet. So
Yeah, we have a great concern for that, and I think that is happening across the nation because we have no idea what the duration might be, when it might repeat, or the severity that we could be seeing in different communities. So I think that there is a lot of concern across the country with our leaders. So typically, in the situation where even in a regular year, the SBA might run out of our lending authority, we appeal to Congress to increase our limit, or award more funds to certain features or of a loan program, or to make a higher appropriation. So I think that we'll all be watching to see how that might kind of play out, and if we will need to tap into some of the other funds. This is what out of the huge package, what they've allowed or funded for the SBA, and there were other appropriations where we also may be able to move or reallocate dollars, and that's what we'll be watching to see how this, as we're watching all these unknown trends across the country, this is another one that we'll be keeping an eye on.
Thank you for that. I think, do you recommend, though, that the small businesses, start their application process now, even though they don't fully know the extent of what they're going to be asking for?
Yes.
I mean, can it be revised as they go?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think my recommendation is to look at the website, get the information, collect documents you might need to help you submit the application. And I do recommend getting in queue as soon as you can. As I said, there's no obligation to take the loan. There's no cost to apply. All of these programs, should you take a loan and find out you don't need it, there's no prepayment penalty. And with the likelihood that a portion of the loans will be forgiven if you use the loan proceeds. Well, you can't go to Vegas, so you might as well put the money where you said it was going. And so we expect that people will take care of their employees, take care of their overhead. And this fits together with a number of different programs that are being offered for homeowners and renters who are employees that are suffering already. So all of these things kind of fit together to make something work for the majority of the people, and particularly for us.
It's only for 8 weeks, so I think...
So that recovery money, yeah.
What's going to be for 8 weeks.
And then you have a longer period of time and low interest to pay it back. So
when is that 8-week date? It starts at the time they...
I think they would determine the 8-week benefit period. So based on the start date of the incident, which is considered to be January 30th, and for the other thing is that the PPP loan, the applications are open till June 30th. For the economic injury disaster loan, they're open for a longer period of time, so people who do wait to determine what their impacts were, they still have time to apply. Like maybe someone's saying, oh, I'm not feeling it so much right now, and I may not, but if this economic downturn is extended, they may feel it later in the year and decide, yes, I should apply.
But there still is a certain amount of money in the pot.
Yeah, and so I would expect that money will expire, but I don't know. I know that's another unknown variable.
Thank you. Senator Moriwaki.
Thank you. Just one follow-on to that. It is a set pot. I was just wondering, is it allocated by state or just first come, first serve?
Actually, it's pretty much first come, first serve. So, I mean, that's another reason we were really pushing to make sure that Hawaii got in the queue. Not behind all the other states, not in our position on the clock, but to get in there and be able to respond.
I think that's why it was so important that we had you here today, so thank you for coming, and I know that we will look forward to the details and information so we can get out to our constituents and our community, the website and information for our small businesses. Members, further questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you.
That was
We'll be in
very,
touch.
very informative.
Very
Thank you.
helpful. We thank you for helping us get the information out to our small business community. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Just for the information of the public, I also just got a text saying that the Chamber of Commerce can also give information, small business information to small businesses.
Again, the Chambers of Commerce have been wonderful in communicating with their clients and helping us reach all the neighbor islands, the trade and business organizations as well, the Hawaii Restaurant Association, the farmer and food manufacturers, all of them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Short recess.
3, 4. Testing, testing.
This is the 2:30 agenda for Senate Committee, Special Committee on the COVID-19. We have with us now Director Riker Wada of Department of Human Resources Development. Riker, are you with us?
I am, Senator. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Would you like to open with a statement, please?
Sure. I'm not exactly sure what our role in this particular committee is going to be, but DHERD continues to work with the rest of the executive branch departments as well as our other jurisdictions, including the counties, the university, the Department of Education, Hawaii Health Systems Corporation, and the judiciary in terms of trying to formulate sound HR policies and practices specifically relating to COVID-19. We continue to put out updated guidance as needed, and as sometimes things change from day to day or hour to hour. Primarily that guidance is directed towards our management who are in charge of effectuating some of these policies and changes. And we continue to do so. I think we all recognize that we will be doing this probably at least for the near foreseeable future. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Thank you. Senators, any questions for Mr. Wada? I'll start. Senator Moriwaki.
Hi, Riker. Hope you're okay there.
You too, you as well.
I have some questions just in terms of our use of our employees, essential workers versus non-essential workers, and if you can give us a rundown of how that's going within the state, because I see, for example, Department of Labor and Industrial Relations needing help on their call centers and other activities in the department, and there may be shifting within departments or across departments, and has that been worked out in terms of, I guess it's repurposing employees and also the social distancing to ensure that we keep our employees safe?
So in terms of, well, let me take a step back and we'll look at the bigger picture. So state departments have been directed to establish 3 different buckets or groups of employees. The first is essential workers, and that essential worker tag is slightly different from its historical definition. And historically, essential or critical was more based on, for instance, an immediate emergency like a hurricane or a tsunami, where certain types of workers were required to make sure that the state would be able to run in case of this type of emergency. The same concept is basically in place for essential workers, but there are a bigger scope of services that need to be running, and one that you, of course, mentioned is unemployment insurance, where this is a critical need for the state of Hawaii right now. And so some of those staff who in a hurricane might not be essential are still considered essential to continue to keep government running, to keep supporting the community and the state at large. So that's the first bucket, essential workers. There's a second group who are considered non-essential, but who are able to telework. And that group has then been instructed to take their work home and work from home or work from a remote location. And then the third group is those who are also non-essential, but their work is not conducive towards telework. And that group also is being on paid status, but they're being at home, knowing that full well, if the need arises, they could be called back to their work. In terms of social distancing, what we have also directed all of our departments to do is that even if someone is essential and they have to come into a work site, that they should still be respecting the same directive from the Department of Health with regards to the at least 6 feet distance. I can tell you within DHERD ourselves, there are situations where we do have to meet in person or we have to meet as a group, and in those situations we're limiting them to less than 10, and we are also trying to effectuate the 6 feet or more distance on those discussions. A lot of our work has shifted in terms of those meetings. We are now using technology to try and effectuate those meetings. It has worked pretty well, but I think this is really a full reimagining of work that the entire state, the entire nation, maybe the entire world is looking at right now. In terms of the repositioning, or we've been using the term redeployment of staff, that is something that is subject to Chapter 89. And so we are in the process right now of soliciting from our departments the list of that third bucket that I just spoke about. And those are the employees who are non-essential but are at home and they cannot telework. It's something that we are considering and has not been put into effect yet, but if in case it is, there would have to be a suspension of Chapter 89 in certain respects in order to redeploy those employees to other job duties. Ideally, what would happen is that would be within their exact same class of work and their exact same type of duties, but potentially at a different work site. Again, using your example, unemployment insurance, and we are working on that as we speak.
So I guess you're working with all the unions to, I guess it's sort of renegotiating, at least during the emergency, this emergency period. Is that kind of how you're working that through?
No, I'm sorry. No, I want to make sure I'm real accurate about this. We have not discussed this with the unions yet. I realize this is a public hearing, and it's likely our union partners, our union friends will be, hearing about this, but it's not something that we've effectuated yet. Governor Ige, although the suspension of Chapter 89 has been elaborated on in his emergency proclamations, it's not something that's been effectuated yet, so it's not something that we can move on. And it's just something we're conceptualizing and trying to figure out how best, if we need to, how best to roll it out. We have worked with individual departments, including the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, in terms of moving their staff around. I think they have been fortunate and creative in terms of getting staff to fill in duties that they wouldn't normally do, but they're effectively volunteering to do so, to fill needs that are critical right now. And so ideally that would be a similar type of situation, even if it was something, for instance, across departments, but it's not something we've put into effect yet.
So your proposal on the 3 buckets, are they, you don't have that count by department as yet as being developed at this time? So that is
I'm sorry, Senator, I couldn't hear the first part of that question.
So I'm just wondering on these 3 categories of employees, you have numbers in terms of essential, non-essential, and teleworking, and those that maybe have to be redeployed. They don't have the connection by computer. I mean, how?
Sure. So currently the currently the departments, individual departments are responsible for that. What we are in the process of doing is we're in the process of aggregating all of that information in terms of the employees that are sitting in each category. But no, we have not completed that yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Members, further questions?
I just have a follow-up.
Senator De La Cruz.
So Riker, when do you expect to complete that?
We have the form going out probably either late this afternoon or tomorrow. That's going to go out to all the departments. We're trying to figure out what's the best way to do it. We actually have 2 different possibilities on board, and it's going to vary based on the size and complexity of the department. So the first option is for us to, through our position control, our transactions office, to provide the department a list of all of their employees, and then they would have to sort the list based on what they have. I think for some of the smaller departments, that will be much easier. I think for some of the larger departments, that might be more difficult.
Okay, can you give us a timeline? So I can understand that each department may have a different schedule because they have a different number of employees. Can you give us a timeline for each department?
I would hesitate to give you a timeline because I can't speak for some, especially for some of the larger departments. If there are people to do that on a 6 foot.
Yeah, so you go and meet with them, and then you send us in writing the timeline. I don't want to just leave this. I don't want to leave it open-ended.
I'm sorry, Senator. I didn't hear the first. After we meet with them.
after you meet with each department or talk to each department, and you can come up with a timeline to get this completed, can you send all those deadlines to the committee? I don't want to leave it open-ended. Because quite frankly, we've been talking about this for quite some time, even before we recessed, and it's still not done.
Yeah, sure. We could definitely send you those timelines.
Are there plans for any furloughs for employees who are considered non-essential or cannot telework?
As of this point, no.
Okay, at what point do you think you're going to have that conversation with the administration?
You know, we have had conversations with Budget and Finance and with the governor's office regarding that, but as of right now, the governor's emergency proc that runs through April 30th, that's what's guiding all of this. And so effectively, all of our employees will continue to be paid up until the 30th. And then I think depending on what the follow-up either with Budget and Finance or the core is, I think a follow-up conversation will have to be made. But again, that's a little, I wouldn't want to speak to that. That's a little outside of our wheelhouse. I mean, effectively, if there were any type of furloughs or reductions in force or anything like that, it would be coming from Budget and Finance.
Okay, I would just think that before they go there, they're going to look at where we need the help. Because there seems to be some departments, as Senator Moriwaki stated, like Department of Labor, and now we just heard DBED saying that they need some assistance to get and through some of the work that that they're assigned or need to get completed to deal with the COVID response.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's entirely accurate.
Did the governor's proclamation suspend any collective bargaining and civil service laws?
What the governor's emergency procs all do is they reference suspension of Chapter 89, which is collective bargaining and civil service, but it hasn't been put into effect. It's basically just the proclamation, and this is again my understanding, just my layperson understanding from talking to our EGs about this, but the proclamation basically allows for the suspension of it at any time after the proclamation, while the proclamation is in effect. The governor as executive, as the executive for the state of Hawaii, has not effectuated that yet. So no, I mean the short answer is no. Collective bargaining has not been suspended at this point.
Okay, so he authorized himself to do it through the proclamation, but he hasn't done that.
That is my understanding, correct.
Okay, so based on the fact that the proclamation is only till April 30th, I think that's going back to what Senator Moriwaki was asking, and what I'm asking for is a timeline, because if it gets to the point where these things are not completed by April 30th, which seems to be the track record of the department, then it's an awkward situation.
Sure.
It's almost like you're waiting it out so you don't have to do it. That's how it comes across. And I don't think that's your intention, but that's where we got to get specific deadlines.
Sure, Senator, I'm sorry, I don't think I understand. Waiting it out to not do what?
To not do what you described you need to do with the departments. To get essential, non-essential, who's going to work from home, all of these things.
Okay, yeah, I would say that I can see your view or perspective on that. But what I can assure you is that's entirely not the case. We have been working on this diligently since COVID has taken off.
Okay, thank you.
Director Wada, my question is not actually it's a comment. So the information that you'll be able to assess from the those employees that are teleworking or working at home now, I think part of of any assessments that you're going to be able to make will also be helpful for us as we move into the future and look at how we can have the opportunity to continue doing some of the teleworking and opportunities for the employees, not just to relieve the traffic conditions, but to also look at how we're concerned about other issues like climate changes and getting cars off the road, etc. But also to look at how we can better serve the public for those positions that have direct dealings with the public or indirect dealings with the public. And I think this is an opportunity to take advantage of that information and assessments that you're going to do. Senator Moriwaki.
Just to add to that, Riker, when you do these assessments to see what exactly the employees in that non-essential, not teleworking group is, so that we could look at that, and also asking the department, as in unemployment insurance or DBED, what are their needs and their needs during this period, and that seems to be information that needs to be done sooner than later. Thank you.
So, Senators, I agree with both of you. Senator Moriwaki, for your point first, I think that's entirely accurate. I think this is the first step. Getting this information from the departments has a potential corollary benefit, and we're not entirely sure if that's going to be if it's actually going to be doable or not. There are, through the CARES Act, there's a possibility that some work that's directly related to COVID-19 response can be reimbursed through the federal government. And so in this situation, there's an off, and I'm not going to say good, but there's an off chance that by being able to track some of these employees' times that have been redeployed, it's possible that it's recompensable. So I think there's a lot of benefits to getting this information, and again, I can just reassure this committee that we are continuing to work on it. For the previous comment, and I believe was that Senator Kidani?
Yes.
Okay, Senator Kidani, I agree with you 100%. In terms of being an optimist, I can tell you that however horrible and how much suffering COVID-19 is causing to our individuals, our people, and the state of Hawaii, I can tell you that there are going to be benefits to this. For the state of Hawaii workforce, this is going to completely re-engineer and force us to reimagine how the state workforce works. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to 100% going to go back to just the status quo that existed prior to COVID-19. And so I think you're right in terms of being able to reimagine and re-engineer how our workforce works and how we serve the public. And so I think, again, if we're trying to look at silver linings, that's a huge benefit.
Thank you. I'm sure there are either laws or resolutions on the book that probably dates back 20 years ago, talking about teleworking, working from home, et cetera, that we probably started and discontinued for one reason or another, and then it was not.
Hi, Riker. Thank you for calling in.
Hello, Senator.
Okay, so I think I'm not quite understanding what you're saying, because what I thought I heard you say in response to a question from Senator Dela Cruz about determining who's essential and who's not, and who can telework and who can't, I thought I heard you say that the primary kuleana for that should be budget and finance, and I'm trying to understand why it's not you.
Oh, no, sir. No, Senator. The actual determination of who is essential, who falls into the three buckets, and I think that's the easiest way for me to conceptualize it. The determination for who falls into the three buckets is with the individual department that employee works for. So, for instance, Department of Labor and Industrial Relations DLIR is the one determining who is going to be essential to 19. What most of the departments did was they immediately, and it was a Wednesday, a few Wednesdays ago, what most of the departments did was they immediately did an assessment that night, and they said, okay, this group of employees, these are our core functions. These are the things that we need to continue to support the community and the state. These people are essential. This next group are people who can do their jobs remotely, so we're going to have them do their jobs remotely. And this last group of people, they can't do their jobs remotely. So for instance, if it was an office assistant 2 whose primary job is filing paperwork, they can't do that from home. So that's who falls into that third group. So each of the departments are the ones who are going to be determining who falls into those 3 buckets. What we're working on right now, what Senator De La Cruz was asking about, was in terms of, for that third bucket of people, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get an aggregate list of all state employees, executive branch employees, who fall into that third bucket. And based on that, we are going to have to see if some of those employees can be redeployed to help out somewhere else. So some of the information we'll be getting, hopefully, again, is based on their employee ID and position number, we'll be able to figure out what the position they're sitting in is. So for instance, if in one department...
So you don't have that information yet?
That's correct. That's exactly what Senator De La Cruz was asking about. That's correct.
Why? We don't have it either because we asked for it 3 weeks ago and it went to a different office on the 5th floor apparently. So it didn't go to your office either.
I'm sorry, regarding a list of non-essential employees in the third bucket?
Yeah, well, to what I'm hearing is that this is the same question that we asked in the 2nd week of March. Related to the agency's continuity of operations plan. Who do you need to keep the lights on? Who can telework? And who doesn't fall in any of those categories? And my understanding was the governor's emergency proclamation was in part granted the power, as you noted, that he hasn't executed yet, to suspend collective bargaining so that people could be re-requisitioned if they're just sitting at home because they cannot work and they're collecting a paycheck. And we have a DLIR, we have a Department of Labor that's going to be 21 days behind on issuing unemployment checks to private citizens who cannot telework and are non-essential and are laid off. And we cannot, so you're telling me we cannot requisition the individuals in state government who are sitting at home because they can't go into work and cannot perform their functions via telework, to help the private citizen taxpayers who are paying their paychecks to facilitate quicker distribution of the unemployment benefits. And you cannot help in that process because you don't have that information either. So
we are...
Am I missing something?
No, I mean, that's entirely accurate. We do not have that information.
What is the time certain date for you to provide us with the list that Senator De La Cruz is asking for? Is it going to be longer than the 21 days that our laid off constituents are going to have to wait for their unemployment checks?
I am not sure how much I could provide in terms of employees. That information tends to be confidential and is subject to.
But the governor just suspended. The governor suspended all of those. He has the ability to suspend all of that. And you're the director of the Department of Human Resources. How come you don't have the authority to look into this and at least provide us with a list so that we can figure out how many individuals are in this third bucket? I mean, how is budget and finance supposed to figure out how much money we're bleeding on a daily basis if we don't know how many non-essential can't work from home individuals there are in our workforce?
I'm not entirely sure that's an accurate statement. So in terms of our current state employees, what the governor's proclamation, the stay-at-home, work-at-home, and slow the spread of COVID-19, those proclamations and policies was basically to increase social distancing, but at the same time to continue to pay our civil service workforce. And so the idea behind that was to continue to keep state government running while still effectuating the concepts behind social distancing. And so again, I mean, if you look at it in terms of workflow, basically what we are trying to do is we're trying to make sure that the core services and then anything else that could be done remotely is continuing to be done. You're entirely correct. We do not have that information yet, and I think this is the point Senator De La Cruz was getting to as well. We're in the process of getting that information, but even once we have that information, there's not very much we can do with it until Chapter 89 is effected. The effectuation of a suspension of Chapter 89 it happens, and so while that seems like there's a process in place for that already because of the emergency proclamation, that is a very large, and I can't stress how important that particular piece is, because effectively, depending on how wide a scope that happens with that, our public sector unions are our partners in terms of helping to continue to keep state government running effectively and efficiently. And so when you take those pieces...
It's not running effectively and efficiently if we can't get the 116,000 individuals who applied for unemployment in the month of March, their unemployment checks within 21 days.
I agree with you in terms of what is being done, but there's a particular system that civil service works upon.
That should be suspended so that our taxpayers who are paying salaries for individuals who cannot work and cannot telework can help facilitate unemployment benefits to those same individuals. So I don't want to belabor the point, and I understand. I've heard your explanation, and so I would just like to ask again to follow up to Senator De La Cruz's request. When can we get that information from you?
So we're getting that request out today or tomorrow, and it's just depending on which of the two avenues I was telling you about, whether it's just sending out a blank form and saying, hey, fill this out, or if we're putting together the information and getting it out to the department. So that's going out in the next couple of days regardless.
Okay, and so how long before you can get the information?
We will be asking for the information from the departments within about a week. And again, the reason we're giving, and it might seem like a long amount of time, but the reason we're doing that is for some of our departments, I mean, that we're talking about, thousands of employees. So ideally what's happened is that the departments have a list of these same 3 buckets themselves, but I don't know if that's true or not. And so that's what we're working under. So, and Senator, I just want to make sure I'm clear, because again, I have my boss as well. And if you want me to pass on the message, Governor Ige, that you would like you would like to suspend Chapter 89 to move these people, I will happily pass on that message to the governor.
I think the message you should pass on is that I believe the DLIR needs at least 50 people to facilitate the unemployment program. And it sounds like it's going to be weeks before you even have an understanding of who might potentially be requisitioned from our state workforce in order to facilitate.
That is possible. I mean, and again, Senator, I'm not by any means an expert on unemployment or the systems that they run under, but from my conversations with Director Murakami, any system that becomes bogged down like this, this is a completely unexpected and unknown situation. So for them to get 10 times, 20 times, 50 times the amount of claims they're normally getting, there isn't a civil service system in the world that can effectively address that immediately. It just doesn't happen.
Riker, with all due respect, you don't need to defend the other agencies. They have the ability to come before the committee and do it themselves. Scott, I thought did a decent job of doing that. But what I'm still not satisfied with is the fact that you can't provide us a time certain in which you'll be able to give us a list of individuals in our state workforce that fall in those different buckets, and why you haven't asked for it already, and why it's taking so long.
Okay, well, again, I will pass on to this committee, first of all, a timeline and any information that I can pass on to this committee regarding this particular issue.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Senator Moriwaki.
Riker, going back to the redeployment, and I think way back when we asked the departments to come up with their continuity of operations plan, we asked
how we move forward on it. And when I say that, it's because this isn't just because that provision is in the emergency proclamation doesn't mean it's a wholesale suspension of Chapter 89. It doesn't mean the executive branch or any of the other jurisdictions can do whatever they want outside of collective bargaining. It's the areas that would be suspended for Chapter 89 are things that would be a direct response to COVID-19. And so those are the things that we're working on now. But again, as the situation changes, those particulars change as well. And so again, the governor has not suspended those, and that's why we have not had those conversations. The governor has not made that decision yet.
So what I'm suggesting is that meeting with the unions could occur, and you could play out the various scenarios so that, in fact, when that does hit, you have a plan of action at that time. You are going to have to adjust.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate that, Senator, and I agree 100%. That is something. And what I can tell you is we do continue to, we are on at least weekly, if not more, I'm contacting either through our labor relations staff or myself directly, or talking to our union partners to try and figure out how best to move this forward. We have had conferences both with our union partners and the other HR directors. I have individual calls with them as well, and I take what you say to heart. I agree 100%.
Senator De La Cruz?
Yeah, what I don't get, Riker, is your statement in saying you'll be happy to pass on a message to the governor from us. Why aren't you coming up with different scenarios and telling the governor, hey, when we reach this point, we have to do X, Y, and Z? Why are you waiting for us to tell you what to do to go ask the governor for some of these things? You know, we're not sure how long we're going to be in this situation. What if it is past April 30th? And you should be coming up with all those contingency plans. These are all the things we asked for before we recessed.
Senator, we are. I mean, when I was asking if this committee wanted me to pass on a particular message, it was that particular message. I can assure you that our plans and in terms of our contingencies, we're working on now.
But you haven't sent us anything yet. You still haven't sent us anything yet. We don't know you have a plan. You've never proved you've had a plan.
And I can appreciate that, Senator. That being said, my understanding is those plans were running through Incident Command and the Chief of Staff. And so
no, well, she said yesterday that the departments can now send their plans directly to us.
She said,
okay.
And if you're getting a different directive, you should let us know.
Well, I have not talked to Chief of Staff about this, but I will follow up on that as well. The other thing I can tell you is that all of the things that we are working on in terms of getting guidance to our executive branches, we are sending to Senate President, Speaker of the House, and both of them. And so
did you say we sent something to the Chief of Staff?
I'm sorry?
You're saying that you actually sent it to the Chief of Staff.
We have our own continuing operations plan. We have our emergency response plan, both of which have been sent to General Hara, and I don't know if Chief of Staff got that as well.
We sent you a memo back on March 11th, and we made reference to documents of how we wanted it formatted.
So again, my understanding was that was going to be coordinated not directly with the Senate.
Okay, so there's no way that the Senate's going to operate where every single document that has to go to the Senate has to be filtered through the Chief of Staff or censored by the Chief of Staff. That's just unheard of, especially in these kind of times. Because then now it's becoming an excuse for stymieing and getting nothing done. Again,
Senator, I appreciate the perspective, but I can tell you getting nothing done is grossly incorrect. I can assure you that our department is working tirelessly to continue helping our executive branch department.
If you can just prove your work, if you can just prove what you've done, if you can just prove to us that you've done some work and send us those plans, then that would be appreciated.
Okay. Again, Senator, I think the greatest proof of that is our guidance.
You really don't have to continue, right? You really don't have to continue. You should just send us the documents that we're asking for.
Okay, Senator.
Follow-up question, Madam Chair.
Senator Kim.
Hi, Riker. Senator.
Hello, Senator.
Just wanted to follow up. So you said that those plans were sent to General Hara. When was that done?
Responsible for creating our own continuity of operations plans and emergency response plans. Those have all been submitted to Hawai'i Emergency Management, on a continuing basis. I think it was updated. The last time we updated it was, I want to say when Ford was Chief of Staff. And that was submitted in and around that time.
So you didn't submit anything since the epidemic and the emergency proclamation?
We reviewed our own continuity of operations plan, emergency response plans, and they, for DHERT, are still accurate. I'm sorry, Senator, you broke up a little. I couldn't hear that last part of the question.
So the question is, the plans that you sent to the governor's office to Ford when he was there, which has been many, many, many months ago.
What we sent and what HIEMA has is our continuity of operations and emergency response plan. So that is department specific in terms of how we continue, how DHERT continues to maintain its critical operations. And so even in a situation like this, yes, we are still continuing our emergency and critical functions. So, some of the things are actually a little different for us in terms of, again, the expansion of who is considered essential and what type of services are essential. And so we do have some staff who is coming into the office and self-distancing, social distancing themselves. But yeah, effectively, the plan for DHERT is the same.
So when you were here in that meeting when we had all of the department heads here, and we asked that you folks review the Washington thing?
No, nothing in that format.
In what format then did you prepare it in?
All of the work that we have prepared since then has been in direct response to what's happening with COVID-19. And so the primary work product that's come out of that is the guidance that we've been sending out to all of the executive branch departments, and then courtesy copying to, like I said, Senate President, Speaker, and the two clerks.
Okay, so you feel that the memo we sent out in the meeting we had did...
We'll provide anything that we have prepared.
Yes, we would really appreciate that, because as the legislative body, I believe that when we do request information from departments, there is a rule that says you need to respond. And so, if you guys are going to do that, when it comes to your budget and we're back in session,
25.
Okay. How many?
Our total staff is about 90, and some of that is, when we say essential, some of it is they're on a rotating basis. So they might be in the office with no one else on 2 to 3 days out of the week.
Okay.
Others.
How many non-essential who are teleworking?
The rest.
How much is the rest?
You have. So
all the rest of our staff is non-essential, can telework.
How many is that?
So 65, you have 65 non-essential who can telework.
Approximately.
Okay, can we have 50 of them for the DLIR to facilitate the management of the unemployment claims program, so that the 116,000 people laid off in March can get their unemployment checks quicker than 21 days? Do you need to suspend collective bargain to 89 in order to requisition your non-essential telework force?
Probably. But for us, even though we are saying they're non-essential and teleworking, they're in that second bucket, a lot of those services are still critical to the state. So for instance, our labor relations division or our transactions division, they're all doing work that's supporting the rest
Labor
of the
relations, perfect group that I think we could consider to be requisitioned to help with the 116,000 people who filed unemployment claims in March because they were laid off. You have 65 people in your office who are non-essential but can work from home. What's it going to take to get those folks requisitioned over? Because it seems to me at this point like the DLIR unemployment program is an essential function at this point. And I don't see how that can be classified as COVID-19 related work. Is there
I
anything?
Okay, it's completely essential work.
Okay, so when can we get those folks transferred over to supplement the DLIR unemployment program?
But again, Senator, I understand what the point you're getting at, but again, our services are critical as well. If you're talking
about they're non-essential. You just said
itself came from Detroit, and so
why don't you send why don't you send us the list of the 65 non-essential workers and what exactly are they doing at home, 8 hours essentially? What are they doing? Can you send that to us, then we can determine that? Because I'm sure that